It's now bigger, more spacious, more comfortable, and even more premium than ever before. The new Range Rover is the creme de la creme of luxury driving. It starts at about 138,000 euros, and this one we're driving today, a HSE, is about 161,000 euros, but more on pricing later. This is the Done Deal YouTube channel. Today we're going to be reviewing the new Range Rover, and if you'd like to search for Range Rovers for sale in Ireland, then hit the link up there. We have over 1,000 trusted dealers nationwide. So it has to be said, the new Range Rover is spectacular, and we'll be going more into that in this review, but I will say one thing up front. There is one major problem for the new Range Rover, but we'll get into that in the rest of the review. For now, enjoy some cinematics. I think the back is probably my favourite angle. It's also where they've kind of improved it the most. But once again, Land Rover Ireland, I'm sorry, for some reason they seem to just magnetise dirt to them. We're going to talk about this metallic paint in a minute, but quickly, let's look under the bonnet and discuss engines, because there's a lot of options. There's actually, I think, 7 different engine options, everything from diesel, V8 petrols, and plug-in hybrids, which are actually the one to go for. So this particular one is the P440e. It's 434 brake horsepower, which is a huge amount of power, but when we go to drive it in a little while, you'll see why it's not actually that quick, because it's very, very heavy. But what does that consist of? So the P440e is a 3-litre 6-cylinder engine, petrol, and that's paired with a 38.2 kilowatt hour battery. The range on EV alone is a staggering 113 kilometers, which is very impressive. Real world, I think you'll see maybe mid-90s, maybe, which is pretty actually decent. There's also a P510e, and that's kind of the similar setup, except that has an output of about 500 brake horsepower. Then if you want a pure petrol, there's the P400, probably a bit unnecessary. There's no need to have a 3-litre petrol engine without a hybrid motor. And then there is a BMW derived V8 4.4 litre. I can only imagine that's a nice one to drive in this. But again, probably a little bit unnecessary. On the subject of unnecessary, if you love diesels, unfortunately, you're going to have to pay for it. So the equivalent P440e in diesel format, if everything else in the car is the same, there's about a 50 grand price difference, which is just, you would have to be a lunatic to go for a diesel one, I think, personally. But there is the 250, the D300 and the D350 if that is the way you want to go. But I personally wouldn't advise it. I think the pick of the bunch is the P440e. I think it's got enough power. I think it's very seamless to drive between that electric motor and the petrol engine. And I actually think the range is really impressive. It's completely class leading. Nothing on its horizon even has anything near that in terms of range. Now, to open the boot, you could press the button, but considering I have it so dirty, I might as well avail of the key. And this is the highlight of any Range Rover, the split tailgate, which is just brilliant if you're getting dogs in and out, or even if you're going for, I don't know, some scenario where you want to sit on the back of your car. It's a lovely little section, and actually it's quite a practical boot too, so you can fold the seats down here really easily and at a touch of a button. And you know the way I had to jump there, because I'm not that tall? Don't worry, Land Rover have you covered with the air suspension that just drops down nice and low. This is embarrassing. That was already at its lowest location, so I'm just really short. But if you're really tall and you don't want to bend down, then you can get it really nice and high. Like, that's above my waist, so that must be at least, I'm going to say about 5.5 foot already there off the ground. You can get this with 7 seats, and that is a long wheelbase, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit later in the video, because the prices, it would frighten you. It would put you off having kids altogether. We're sitting in the rear seats, and to be fair, there's a lot going on If you've young kids, they'll be kept entertained on a long drive. It's worth noting that depending on which spec you get, it can be anything from 7 seats to, if you get something like the Autobiography or the SV, you can actually get this with only 2 seats back here, and it almost looks like a business class seat on an airplane. It's really, really cool. But back here, what have we going on? So to begin with, really comfortable seats that you can actually adjust here, and you can actually recline them back, which is really, really nice. Down here, you've got your own climate control, which is very good. So you basically have 4 different climate controls: driver, passenger, and rear driver. And what's more is, there's not only heated seats if you push that in, but also cooled seats. Really, really like that. Then when you sit back, look how cool this is. Young kids will have a field day with this. You can close and open the blind up above you going over the panoramic sunroof. Really, really cool. As a whole, for anyone, whether they're young or old, lovely place to sit on a long drive. And what's more is, ISOFIX points really, really easy to find. And there is a lovely, that just works really well. And then in here you have a bit of storage too, if you want to hide wallets or phones or anything like that when you're going into a shop. Overall, 10 out of 10 back here. Oh, it is nice in here. So when you open it up, obviously it is push start, and if the car hadn't been off, that panoramic sunroof or the blind would have opened right up. It's just, it makes it a sense of occasion as you get in. The seats are so comfortable, the padding, the positioning, you can mess around with it so much and get it exactly how you like it. And they're heated and cooled. So hot day, you can cool them down. Cold day, you can heat them up. Heated steering wheel, that's actually an optional extra. 100% worth speccing, not just on this car, but any car that you can. It is the best thing ever, especially if you live in Ireland. Now, you've got a big armrest here, a big armrest here. You've got an adjustable one here. It's just designed around comfort, but it's also quite good. You've got a digital display up in front of you here. It's very simple. I just like to have it traditional settings. That's all you really need, but it does just look nicer. And then you've got a 13.1 inch screen here. Fantastic. Apple CarPlay is wireless, which is just brilliant. Your phone connects up. It is a little bit complicated when you start going through all the different modes. There's so much that you can play around with. But the reality is 99% of the time, once you own this car, you'll have it all set up just how you like it, and it will just work perfectly. I've had the car now for about 5 days. I've done about 400 kilometers in it. And being honest, haven't touched the settings since I got it on the first day. Got all my mirrors the right way, and that was that. 2 big glove boxes here, nice one underneath, and in true Range Rover fashion, there's a top glove box too. Storage in here, it's like a meter deep there. It's actually crazy. And then I love this, cup holders, but you can actually just have that as a deep little bit of storage, and there's USB and USB-C charging points. And then more storage down here with wireless charging as well. And here again, this whole system, the climate control, it can be used through here, but there's some little shortcuts here. So if you pull out on this, you can actually change the different climate. And just as a whole, it's lovely to use. All your cruise control, your lane keep, all that's here on the right hand side, and then your music and your phone is on the left hand side. It's like a haptic feedback. It works really, really well. And of course, being a Land Rover, it has volume knob both here and a good old-fashioned swivel here. Again, love, love, love that. Well, that's enough of in here. I think now it's time to go for a drive. So to drive, well, obviously it is nice. Wafting is the word I've used in the Range Rover Sport, and it's also the word I'd use to describe this. It is so comfortable. The air suspension is just divine. It glides over bumps. In fact, it can use the sat nav to predict what way you're going to go, and it can actually tighten and loosen the suspension and make it softer and more stiff depending on what road is ahead, which is just so clever. The driving position is glorious. The amount of adjustability in the seat, both here and in your infotainment system, is actually mental. You can just change it to any position you like, bolsters, headrests, everything. In terms of the noise level in here, it is so quiet, and that's because I think there's double glazed windows, and they also use a technology kind of like the iPhone AirPods noise cancelling technology. It works fantastically, and on a long drive on the motorway, it is really, really quiet. I actually think you can spec another option pack that even enhances that noise cancelling. But anyway, aside from that, what's it like to drive in the real world? Well, it's a big old brute, it's a big car, and what that means is driving around town, it does feel massive and you can barely fit in any parking spots, but the cameras are brilliant. The 360 camera, you can also look underneath you. It is a very comprehensive camera setup. And what's more is, this car actually has rear wheel steering, which I think this is the first car I've ever driven that has that. And it basically can turn the rear wheels by up to 7 degrees, which makes the turning circle in this actually really, really good. So when you are driving around town, it doesn't necessarily feel as big as it is with all that help from the cameras, the rear wheel steering, and all the other little bits. Now, in terms of power, what's it like? Well, you can put it into different modes here. We'll put it into dynamic quickly now, so you can feel that power. And there's a little bit of lag, but that electric motor combined with that 3 litre 6-cylinder petrol engine means it does take off quickly, but it is probably the slowest 400 horsepower you're ever going to experience, because obviously this thing weighs a lot. And yeah, again, if you are trying to drive it dynamically, it's not the fastest, most agile car in the world, but it's not designed to be. In fact, I found myself, when I get into this, it just instills a calmness in me. I don't really want to get anywhere in a rush, and I think that's a really, really important thing. You don't want to be thinking about how quickly, how aggressively can I drive, because you'll probably be disappointed. So that's what it's like to drive the new Range Rover. And I did say earlier, there is one problem with the new Range Rover, and that is the Range Rover Sport. It is nearly as good. Yes, this is a little bit better, but it's not worth the jump in price, in my opinion. In the old days, the Range Rover was this standalone chassis, and then the Range Rover Sport was based in the Discovery, and it was nowhere near as good. But now, these are brilliant, both the Range Rover and the Range Rover Sport. So personally, I think that's probably the biggest issue. Another thing I do want to discuss is now you can get this with 7 seats, which I believe is the first time you could ever get the full-blown Range Rover with 7 seats. However, to get it with 7 seats, you have to get the long wheelbase. So that goes from a starting price of 130 odd thousand to 161,000 euros, which makes having extra children expensive. But no, we're not there yet, because if you want to get 7 seats, it is 224,000 euros. So that will definitely make you think about that. Now, a big thing I do want to discuss is specs, and my advice always when buying a car is go down to your local dealer and spec one up with them, because they know all the little packages, the ins and outs, far better than I would. However, I do want to talk about all the different kind of options we have on this car. So this is a HSE, which brings the price up, and then on top of that we've got a couple different specs. To begin with, the exterior colour, which is called Constellation Blue in gloss finish. How much do you think that costs? 6,045 euro. What's in the paint that makes it that expensive? It's a nice colour, I'll admit, but 6 grand, probably a bit overkill in my personal opinion. A few other options, there's a secure tracker on this for about 600 quid, well worth getting. On top of that, there is a sliding pan roof. I think that's because it opens, that's 440 euro, which is actually really good value, to be fair. Privacy glass, then there's some fancier carpets, a few other things. This isn't actually spec to the 9s, but you can go to the 9s. Well, you can go to the 4s. You can get in to 400,000 euro. Yesterday I spec'd one up, which is mad. And I just can't imagine, if you were to spec one of those, what would happen when you go back to the dealer in 18 months time and you want to trade it in. The devaluation just must be absolutely obscene. And that's why I think Range Rover Ireland or Land Rover Ireland have done a superb job. This is the way I'd spec one, into around the 150 range. You get the P440e, and then maybe you put the HSE package, and then if you want that panoramic sunroof, or you do want to upgrade your colour, then maybe that's something to consider. But as a whole, I think the 150 mark for these is probably where it's at. But if it was my money, I'd probably buy a Sport and add a little bit of spec to it. So that's my 2 cents. Anyway, a big thank you for watching today's review. If you've enjoyed it, then please make sure to give us some feedback. Of course, subscribe, and we will see you in the next one.